After 2 games in Vancouver, the series moves to Smashville. We'll look at what the Preds need to fix ahead of Game 3 and what's been working well for them on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start with a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who turn into every single show. We love you guys, and we appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio.
Well, we had 2 games in Vancouver, which means we are now headed back to Smashville for Game 3. We will talk about what the implications are of that first game back in Smashville, and do the Preds have an opportunity to win 2 here in the Music City? Plus, we'll take a look back at the first 2 games of the series with a special playoff plus minus, looking at the highs and lows of the first 2 games. And there's no other way to describe this, just the double cup. Some of you probably know what I'm talking about right away, but Juuse Saros has turned Nashville into a frenzy with comments about the double cup. So
it's a whole thing, y'all. It's a whole thing.
I guess that's content now. We'll get into all that on today's show. First, though, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist classic on Classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, Ann, 2 games in Vancouver. The Predators go 1-1. Really had a chance to go 2-0, but that's a topic for another day. I dare say winning one of those first 2 games in Vancouver, really what, maybe the best Nashville could have asked for.
Yeah, I think coming home 1-1 is huge. It's bigger than a 1-game difference. Coming home in a 7-game series, down 2 games or tied 1-1. And I'm with you. I mean, at some point we'll do some sort of season retrospective and look back on Game 1 and how it was just right there for the Nashville Predators to come home 2-0. But I think with the style of play, the way the first 2 games have gone, look, Nashville came home. The series is tied. They're back here in Smashville. They're back home in front of their own fans. I think the experience, the first 2 games, kind of getting those under their belt on the road has been good. And I like what you said at the opening of the show. Like, is this an opportunity for Nashville to pick up 2 home games? I don't know. Home games have not always been Nashville's friend this season. I mean, but we're a different Nashville team now. They're different. So let's see what they can do at home.
You hope, yeah. This is going to be the Nashville Predators' opportunity to really put their stamp on this series, right? Because they're coming into Smashville. Smashville hasn't had, I would say, playoff hockey they're optimistic about in quite some time. Because as fun as that 2021 series was great, because that was the first series in front of the full fans.
Right.
The fans were just happy to be there, but no one really expected the Predators to beat the Hurricanes.
No.
2022, by the time that series got back in Nashville, it seemed like the Avalanche had kind of already won.
Yes.
This is the first time that the Nashville Predators don't find themselves in a hole going back to Smashville for Game 3 in quite some time.
Right.
And that's huge because I think that's going to up the ante for this crowd. a little bit. They're going to be wild. And I feel like the Nashville Predators fans really sense that there's an opportunity here, especially if you can win this game 3. I don't have the exact stat in front of me, but it's well known in the NHL that if a series is tied 1-1, the team that wins game 3 wins series like something like 80% of the time or
Wow.
something like that. So this is pivotal. It's on Nashville's home ice. And personally, I'm just excited to see what this crowd can do because, there is a little bit of a sense that, if they win this game, they have a real opportunity to finish off the upset.
I love this game 3 setup for Nashville too. Nashville comes home. We talked about, split the series so far 1-1, but I think it feels different that Nashville won the second game. Like they could have won the first, but they did win the second. And I think that brings home momentum. And the way that they won the second has, I think, earned the respect of the Predators fans in the sense that, okay, these guys are going to be willing to do whatever it takes to win a game. And I think the fans have so appreciated this season, what the Predators have done, especially down the stretch. Like that 18-game point streak, that was not easy. The team really had to gut out some of those wins, and this team has gone through growth. And like we say in the Kimmel House, nobody likes growth. It's painful, it's rough. But I think that the team, what they've been through, Andrew Brunette, Barry Trotz at the helm really has kind of reawakened something for the Smashville crowd. So I think coming in off of a win to home ice at Bridgestone Arena, I think it's a really optimum setup for the Predators as far as what can they get from the crowd to kind of be maybe just a little teeny tiny X factor. And again, shout out to Vancouver. Vancouver's crowd was incredible. Like
Absolutely,
that was fun to watch.
Yeah, it was a great crowd.
Great.
I mentioned this on the other show, contrary to what, maybe some in the Nashville media have said. I kind of like the scenes of them spilling out in the streets and after game 1 and everything like that. I think it ups the ante a little bit. I think it's cool to see a fan base that is really invested in this and really cares, celebrating their team and celebrating their first playoff or home playoff game. And
absolutely,
what was it since 2015? So I love it that we have two passionate fan bases really getting behind their team right here. And it's going to be interesting to rebound, and because there's no Thatcher Demko, from what we heard after the game,
right.
Week to week at this point. So it sounds like the Canucks are going to have to go at least 2, maybe 3 more games without him, and it feels like the Nashville Predators feel like they can really feel a chance here. And it obviously sucks for Demko, and it sucks because you want everybody 100%,
right?
But you watch this and you get the sense that okay, like this maybe is an opening a little bit.
It's interesting because I feel like the emotion of losing Demko benefits the Nashville Predators, not because it changes their perspective on the game, but I wonder if it affects the Vancouver Canucks perspective on the game. And of course they have full confidence in Casey DeSmith. And I know that there are people that are like, he's trash, he's so bad. No, his save percentage is below 900, but he beat Nashville already once this season, in net. So, that's who they're going to go with. If you're a goalie in the NHL, you're really not total trash. So I don't know that Nashville really feels like, hey, Demko's not in. Obviously, Demko had a great season, but I don't think it changes anything for Nashville about how they view this game or their opportunity. But I do wonder if it changes how the Canucks do, in the sense that like Demko's really a little bit of an ace up the sleeve. And it's not like Vancouver doesn't have a ton of other talent. It's not like Vancouver got to the postseason solely on the back of Thatcher Demko. I mean, they've got 100-point scorer. They've got who is likely to be the Norris Trophy winner. So it's not like they were a one-trick pony and their pony was Thatcher Demko. But, you do wonder how much does that throw that team off And if that team feels a little bit off, can Nashville capitalize on it? I don't necessarily think the Predators are like sweet dismiss.
No.
I don't think they're doing that. But I wonder if it makes the Canucks feel like, dang it, we're not bringing our 100% best, and maybe that affects how they play the game. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be
Maybe
interesting.
hardly tested in game 2. It's hard to know what to expect from DeSmith because we didn't see him for like the last 20 minutes of the game. I mean, who knows if he was even on the ice? Was he in the locker room? We don't know.
Well, and the other thing that you know what? Actually, let's not talk about that, Lau. Let's talk about that in plus minus.
Ooh,
Coming
okay.
up in just 1 second. We will take a look back at the pros and cons, the ups and downs from the first 2 games of this series on a special midday edition or midweek edition of the plus minus. All that coming up in just 1 second. First, though, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've been told I'm a pretty competitive person, and that is probably the reason nobody in my family wants to do the Thanksgiving Day football backyard contest with me anymore. Mm-hmm. I've been told I take it way too seriously. I'm assuming you can probably relate.
Maybe a little bit.
There we go.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, all of us have a competitive side, right? And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, but it's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is just messing around with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties just like classic Monopoly, but I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And all of the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is in our friend group. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get into the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, Ann, it's time in the honor of the postseason to break out a special midweek plus minus. You guys who follow the show know how it works. We give pluses to things we like, minuses to things that need improvement. We're going to do that for the first 2 games of the series so far. And start us off with a plus.
My first plus is going to be to the trade deadline pickups. Let's give a shout out to Jason Zucker, rhymes with hooker, and Anthony Beauvillier. I always have to say his name like that because when I write it down, I want to say Zucker. And it's Zucker.
Hey, yeah.
I want to say Zucker. Yeah, Zucker.
Jason Zuckerberg.
Yes, maybe that's where I get it. So I try to say it in my head, but the rest of it comes out loud. But I want to give my first plus to these guys because when Nashville picked them up at the trade deadline, I think it was sort of a lukewarm reception among, Predators fans as far as like, meh, okay, all right, well, we've got guys, but you got some more guys. But Jason Zucker and Anthony Beauvillier have come in, and they've been really, really great for the Predators in this postseason. And look, we've seen, some things from Zucker at the end of the regular season, kind of still wondering like, hey, Anthony Beauvillier, what do we have? What do we have in this player? And I think, his goal in game 2, key, Jason Zucker's goal in game 1, key. When you weren't able to get your traditional Predators offensive guys going, these 2 guys stepped up. And so I want to give a shout out to them. I don't think that it's easy to come in to a new team at the trade deadline, to come into a team that's not expected to make the postseason, but gets in. You've got some inexperienced players. And I think that they've been really important to the Predators in these first 2 games. Hopefully will continue to be down the stretch in this series. So big fat plus to Jason Zucker and Anthony Beauvillier. Also, as a side note, plus to Jason Zucker, who wore the most killer black and white herringbone suit on this trip. It was really cool. Really cool.
The man is styling.
Oh my gosh, it was fabulous. Fabulous. Yeah.
And in that same vein of non-traditional people stepping up, I'm going to give a plus to Ryan McDonagh
Come
in
on.
this series. This, I think it's no secret if you've looked at the shots on goal numbers from these two games this season, that this has kind of morphed into more of a battle of defenses. We know Vancouver's got a great defense, a lot of big guys who don't give Predators players a lot of space. They also have some really good two-way fours that drop back to help. So the Nashville Predators, to kind of keep things balanced, they sort of need a tough defense themselves. And that's where I think Ryan McDonagh has really come into play this series. Playoff veteran, first playoff game for the Nashville Predators, or first two games, these past two games, after coming over from Tampa. You can kind of see that cup experience playing out whenever he's on the ice. Like he just knows what to do. Like I can't recall him really doing anything to screw up these first two games. He seems to be on the ice every other shift, actually led the Predators in ice time the last game. He's blocking shots. He's, knocking guys over in front of the net. He's winning puck battles along the boards. There's a lot of people that I think stepped up in game two. Forsberg, I think, rebounded from, a really bad game in game one. But for me, Ryan McDonagh has been the constant. And he's been the guy that's done the stuff that hasn't necessarily shown up on the stat sheet. And he's done it really well these first two games of the series. And that's going to be absolutely key, because the Predators are going to need to match up defense for defense with Vancouver the way, sort of the offense has gone this series.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm just a huge RPM fan. Like Ryan Patrick, I just think is amazing. One of the things that I've noticed in these first two games is that he brings out elements of his game as needed. He's not necessarily somebody that you would look at and say, hey, that's a very physical defender. But in this series, when Vancouver has been so very physical, Ryan McDonagh's been able to match that. And I'm with you. It's little things that you don't necessarily get the credit for, the stat for. Ryan McDonagh's the guy. I think he has 100. I looked it up the other day, maybe 187 postseason games under his belt. Like Ryan McDonagh has done the playoffs and done them very successfully 2 years in a row. So he's just so important for this Predators team.
Yeah. I can't remember he's in like the top 6 in the NHL in active playoff games played.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously 2 cups in Tampa, like a couple of deep runs with the Rangers. So he knows what it takes to succeed in the playoffs. So yeah, absolutely.
Love that. I'm going to piggyback off that with one more plus. I know we have to talk about the minuses, but one more plus I do want to give out, and that's to another defenseman, and that is to Spencer Stasney. And again, I know people get tired of hearing me talk about Spencer Stasney, but this is Spencer Stasney's first NHL playoff experience. And you have to wonder, like, how are these guys going to do? And this is a player who has not spent 82 games with the Nashville Predators, playing in this system, building rapport with the other defensemen. This is somebody who was called up, sent back, and then called back up. I feel like Spencer Stasney has looked like a pro in these 2 games. Calm, cool, collected. I think it's great that he's playing with Luke Schenn, another guy who has tons of playoff experience. So he kind of has that veteran right there with him, but he has been reliable. No moment has seemed too big for Spencer Stasney. You've seen him kind of choose times to get down in the very limited amount of offense that the Predators seem to have played in these first 2 games. He just seems to be handling this pressure like it is nothing. And part of that is he's been on some deep runs with the Milwaukee Admirals, and last season he was the clutch guy in the series with the Manitoba Moose. It was their game 5, which is a game 7, and won the game with 26 seconds left. Like, he's made for these big moments. Very calm, quiet, cool. You're not going to see him with some outrageous celebration, but Spencer Stasney just has really impressed me in this situation.
And you're
Loved it.
starting to see why the Predators were so gung-ho about finding a place for him on this roster, right?
Yes.
Was because you wanted to get, kind of use his experience. And, we've been talking for really since this past offseason, this past trade camp, where it looked like Spencer Stasney is ready. The Predators
So,
thought Spencer Stasney was ready, and you
yep.
kind of heard whispers of that around the trade deadline. Was Barry Trotz wanted to make a move to open up a spot for Spencer Stasney to come in and maybe have some full-time playing time. That's the Predators really think highly of him, and you're starting to see why. As Eric Dene has kind of hinted on the show before, there is an argument to be made. He's the best, or at least one of the top 3 skaters in the entire organization
100%.
already.
Yeah.
So, you have his skating ability, you have his sort of good penchant for, sort of simplifying things and not trying to do too much and just trying to do the simple things very, very solid, good fundamentals. The Predators have something special here
I
in
like
Spencer
him.
Stasney. I think a really good player that can be a top 4 piece on this team for a really long time.
Agreed.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows in round 1, though. There are some negatives to talk about. We will get to that coming up in just 1 second.
First, want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Indeed. When you drafted that hockey fantasy team back in October, that I'm sure is still killing it, did you ever take a minute to think, man, I wish that I could handpick the best stars for my business team? If you're looking to build your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on all these multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills. You can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. Sponsor a job, and Indeed will match you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description right when you post. With Indeed, you can start that hiring fast. The right candidate is doing everything they can to find you. And if you use Indeed, you can be sure you're doing everything you can to find them too. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
All right, and let's get to some minuses from this series, shall we?
I guess. Yeah,
All right.
probably.
Let's talk about the shots on goal.
Oh, that's my number one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You take that. What are your thoughts on just this being a low shooting series so far?
It does not work to Nashville's favor. I don't think that it works to Nashville's favor. It may be a little bit helpful that Thatcher Demko might not be a net for the rest of this series, and that may be enough. But Nashville averages 32 shots a game. And you remember there were some games where Nashville got up near 40 shots per game. You're looking at 22 shots in game 1, 16 shots on goal in game 2. You've got to get the puck on net more. Now, to do that, you got to have the puck. And I think that's something that the Predators have to work through too. I do think, with only 16 shots, the Predators got 4 goals. One of those was an empty net goal. So Casey DeSmith, they beat him on 3 goals. That's good, but you just got to get the puck to net, puck on net more. You just got to get the puck more. I mean, there's that too.
Yeah, especially I think with the way, the goaltending situation is, you want the Predators to be able to test DeSmith. You want them to be able to kind of challenge a little bit. So that's, I think, going to be a big thing for the Nashville Predators is figuring out, hey, like we said, we have a little bit of an opportunity here. Are we going to be able to maybe, test DeSmith a little bit more, maybe get some more sustained pressure, maybe some more shots on goal? Maybe that opens things up a little bit.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
speaking of, I am going to give a minus to the concept of backup goalies in the playoffs for the Nashville Predators. Because I think when a lot of people saw Thatcher Demko was out, like obviously it sucks for Vancouver.
It does.
Obviously, it sucks for Thatcher Demko because he's worked really hard to get back. But the concept of backup goalies coming in against Nashville in the postseason haven't exactly worked out in Nashville's favor over the
No.
years.
Oh my gosh.
Let's go back to the 2008 Stanley Cup playoffs. Dominik Hasek for the Red Wings gets chased after 2 really bad games. Chris Osgood comes in and shuts the door. Just 1 goal given up in the last 2 games, and the Red Wings win the series. The most famous one is Scott Darling. Remember him?
No.
Corey Crawford for Chicago, not
Yeah.
playing well. Predators look like maybe they have the Chicago Blackhawks on the ropes a little bit, have a chance to pull the upset over the Blackhawks. In comes Scott Darling, who no one has ever heard of before, comes in and just absolutely looks like the second coming of Patrick Waugh out there and just absolutely shuts the door shut. You talk about 2018 for the Colorado Avalanche series.
Oh gosh.
Preds have this one in the bag, it looks like. Jonathan Bernier gets hurt. In comes Andrew Hammond, almost single-handedly turns this series into 7 games. Basically steals game 5, making it 3-2. Almost makes it a tie series with a stellar performance in game 6. So it always seems like backup goalies wind up bringing their best in the goaltending or in the playoffs against the Nashville
Yes.
Predators. So yeah, and I'm not exactly jumping for joy either.
I know the people who are like, yes, to Smith. And I'm like, no. My favorite are the people on social media that will post something. They're like, any team's backup goalie in the playoffs versus the Predators. And then they just post a picture of a brick wall.
Yeah.
You know what? We have read this story too many times to get that excited about backup goaltending in the playoffs. Yeah. It's not always been a happy situation for the Nashville Predators. And maybe that's why the Predators are like, look, like we just got to not focus on that because it has not always panned out very well for them. Oh gosh. So rough.
Yeah, exactly. We can't end though on doom and gloom, Anne. So
No.
let's end with another plus, and let's talk about the legend of the double cup.
It just, I have to tell you, this just his snowball into a whole thing. I think we need to play the clip. It's a very brief clip, but
Yeah.
after game 2, there was a moment where somebody had kind of crashed into Juuse Saros, looked like a little bit of an awkward hit, kind of a weird, angle that this, Canucks player came in and hit Saros. And so our good friend Alex Doherty asked Saros, like, hey, everything okay in the game after that hit? Yo, this is, I can almost not get out. This is what Juuse Saros had to say.
Yeah, I mean, good thing I'm wearing a double cup. that was helpful there.
Yo, Juuse Saros.
Double cup. And no. This isn't where the story ends, Anne.
No, it's not.
Because you heard that clip.
Yes.
And you went down a rabbit hole on the double cup.
Okay, in my defense, first of all, I was led down this rabbit hole in a conversation. But okay, I'm the mother of a girl and 2 boys. The boys both did sports, so I'm very familiar with the whole cup situation. But I was like, a double cup. This is something I've never heard. Well, was sent an article, and sadly, really began researching the double cup. This article was from 2017, and technology changes. And if there's anything that the United States likes to invest in, it's the comfort of men. So I'm sure that there's even more interesting information. But it is about the double cup. And so Brian Elliott, who was the Flames goaltender at the time, posted a picture of his cup from 2014 that was cracked and said, "Thank goodness for the double cup." And I'm like, double cup? How does this work? It's actually one cup inside the other cup, and they kind of wear a little bit of a different girdle to kind of hold things in place a little differently than your traditional cup holder, but it's one inside the other. Here's the other thing. A lot of NHL goaltenders actually triple cup. Now we know that Juuse Saros, he's just a double cup kind of guy, but a lot of them triple cup. Devin Dubnyk, triple cupper. Little bit of information, triple cupper. They're made out of hard plastic. Sometimes they're made out of carbon fiber. One of my favorite stories from this article that I read is that Ryan Miller was drafted, went to training camp for the Buffalo Sabres, single cup kind of guy coming out of college. And the trainers were like, "Hey, we've got some things equipment wise we would suggest you use." And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm good. Like, I've never had a problem. This is plenty." And they said, "Okay, well, if it becomes a problem, let us know and we'll let you know the options." And about 3 days later in training camp, he went to them and he was like, "What you got? This is not going to work because just shots are harder. They come faster. And it could be bad." Darcy Kemper, my friend, spent 3 days on crutches because he apparently needed to double or triple cup. I don't know, but it has become a whole thing. So, look, I love Juuse Saros. I hope that Juuse Saros and his lovely wife have as many children as they want to have. And so I am thankful that Juuse Saros is in a good position for that. But yes, friends, there is a whole bunch of research on cups and NHL goaltenders. And unfortunately, I got sucked in and found a bunch of it.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
so there's
and
that.
I just have to thank you. Not a lot of people were brave enough to, give us that information. So thank you for having the balls to do this.
Yeah.
Really.
There you go. There you go. I still don't think it hurts worse than labor, y'all, but
let's not test any of that theory.
No.
Yeah. Game 3 coming up tomorrow night. We'll have an official preview. We'll also take some of your questions about the series coming up in a special Friday mailbag segment of the Locked On Predators podcast. Until then, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Back with an auto episode tomorrow. We'll see you then.